Welcome to In the Middle. I'm Vykky. I'm a wife, a mom, and a leader shaping some of the world's most beloved brands. This is the podcast for all of us figuring it out in real time. In 20 minutes or less, let's get in the middle of it all. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to In the Middle. I'm so glad you're here. I don't know about you, but it feels like in the last few years, it's been really hard for me to get on LinkedIn and not see a company announcing layoffs or someone I know personally being impacted by a layoff. It's hard, and it's especially hard when it happens to you. If you've ever been impacted by a layoff, you probably can remember that moment where nothing was technically wrong at work, but things definitely felt different. Meetings started to shift, language started to change, maybe budget started to get cut, and you're looking around like, is it me? Am I tripping? Today's conversation is about that moment. Not just what happens after a layoff, but the before and during. This is going to be a two-part episode, and my hope is that by the end of both episodes, you walk away feeling more prepared should you ever have to face a layoff and more confident that you can come out stronger on the other side. I've been on both sides of a layoff. I've been cut and I've survived them. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk about what I noticed, how I prepared, and the lessons I learned that changed everything for me and my family. So let's get into when the ground starts to shift. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I joined my company's earnings call, and for those of you who maybe don't work for a publicly traded company or you're not familiar with the term, typically, publicly traded companies host these earnings calls, usually on a quarterly basis, where essentially they are reporting out on the business's performance. They're not required, but companies usually do them so that Wall Street analysts aren't speculating about the performance of the business, and it impacts the stock price and all of those things. So anyway, I joined my company's earnings call like I always do. And that's probably my first little tip, is that if you aren't doing that today and you work for a publicly traded company, you should. So I'm on this call, and my background is in marketing and communications. It's not in finance, but even from my elementary finance experience and knowledge, I could tell that things weren't quite right. I heard a lot of negatives. I heard a lot of misses. By the time I got off of that call, I knew something wasn't right. And I left really feeling nervous for the business and honestly super nervous for me and my family because this is my livelihood. So I would say that the earnings call was maybe the first thing that I noticed, but then it was the day in and day out that really signaled to me that things were shifting at the business. Again, there weren't these direct conversations. There was no glaring sign that said, oh, we're in trouble. We aren't having enough sales. It was none of that, but the budget started to shift. So I led a team that a part of our job was to go and work with our influencers and do live events. And the teams that would travel, that started to get pared down to like a skeleton crew, or we had to have discussions about maybe not even going and sending anyone there at the sacrifice of the experience that we were going to provide for our customers and for fans. And that was maybe another sign that I was like, things don't seem right. Again, no real conversations, but I started to collect data. I also started to notice leaders quietly leaving. Now, hear my heart. I'm not saying if you see some leaders leaving your company that you're in danger. It's not that. But I do think I've noticed a little bit of a pattern in my experience. And so leaders started to quietly leave. There weren't major announcements. Sometimes there weren't even backfills for the roles. And I will collect this data, and I started to sort of say, what are the patterns that I'm seeing? I'm seeing this change. I'm seeing this restriction. I'm seeing decisions being made that don't make as much sense as maybe even 18 months prior. And I started to just get this feeling that things were about to shift at the company and our livelihoods could be in danger. And that is my first truth. Your body notices before your inbox does. Oftentimes, businesses won't shout it from the rooftops when you're getting ready to go through a layoff, and largely because there is hope and there's typically a plan to move the business in the right direction. And so I would say that I don't necessarily think companies end up here for nefarious reasons, but I also think we have to be in the driver's seats of our lives, and we have to pay attention, even if things aren't explicitly shared to us. I would say that reading the room isn't fear, it's awareness. And so it's your responsibility to show up to the earnings calls, to ask your boss the hard questions. If you start to see those patterns of, oh, there's a pause on travel, we usually say T&E in corporate, travel and expenses, or your budget's being given back to the business. Again, these things by themselves don't necessarily mean your company is headed in the wrong direction. But if you start to see a bunch of these things, just trust your intuition and ask some of the hard questions. You may not get a direct answer because candidly, your leader may not know and your leader may not be in the know. And there may not be something definitive that they can share. But the onus is on you to drive your own career and try to protect yourself as much as possible. And it's not just what you're hearing from your company. This is important to follow. Like, I like to watch Squawk Box and Yahoo Finance and things like that. Again, I'm not a finance person by any means, but I have enough working knowledge to be able to see patterns and to do my best to stay informed about the health of the business. Let's get into truth number 2. Preparation is power, not pessimism. So when I started to see these patterns, I said, okay, things don't feel right. I had a background in tech, and so I'd seen a lot of layoffs and reorgs and things like that too. So that also contributed to me feeling like I'm not sure how this thing's going to go, but I knew that I needed to be prepared should things go really poorly for the business. And what does that look like in practice? I started to look, and not like fire sale look, applying to any and everything. I was very intentional. I have this saying where I say, I always want to run towards something and not away from something. So I didn't apply to a bunch of jobs. I applied to roles that even if the business was healthy and I wasn't worried at all, I would still apply to those roles. And I applied to roles that genuinely interest me. I felt like it would stretch me, or I was applying to roles at brands that I admire and I always wanted to work for. I started to quietly update things. I refreshed my LinkedIn. I refreshed my resume. I reached out to colleagues and former colleagues to catch up over coffee and just to see how the market was moving. I spent a little bit more time on LinkedIn to see how other companies were faring. I did everything that I could to be really prepared and to be really informed about the health of not only my business, as well as the market and how the job market was, because I hadn't really been paying attention. I also spent time talking to my husband about the things that I was seeing. I wanted to make sure that he understood maybe the additional stressors that I was bringing home, that I was looking at certain roles, asking his opinion about roles. Should I end up on the phone with a recruiter? I wanted to get his opinion on how to navigate conversations and whether or not it was a brand that he thought it made sense for me to go to. Additionally, I wanted to get his pulse on, what if I found something in a different state? Would he be open to us relocating our family for an opportunity? I also found that preparation really helped my nervous system. And I've said this a lot on the pod, and it's just something that I truly live by. I want to be in the driver's seat of my life as much as I can. Now, truly, Jesus has the wheel, but maybe I just sit a little bit on the edge. But in all seriousness, I just don't want life to happen to me. I want to be intentional, and I want to be able to say when I get to the end of my life that I did everything that I could in my power to live the fullest and most exciting and most fulfilling life I could have. And as a part of that, going through this preparation helped me to sleep every night to say, okay, well, you did everything you could in your power, whether that's asking the right questions, being a good steward of the budget that I still had. In all of this preparation, I wasn't planning for the worst. I was setting myself up to have options. And again, that's proactive. It's being in the driver's seat. It's saying, even if the company turns it around and continues to be healthy, if you get a job offer, now you have the option. Do you want to stay, or do you want to take this offer and go? That leads me to my third truth. The goal isn't to predict, the goal is to be ready. So what does it mean to be ready? It's not just about having your resume ready and things like that professionally. Absolutely, you should do that. And candidly, just as an aside, I believe that you should always have your resume up to date. And it's not because you're looking, but it's because you probably do a lot of really good work day in and day out. But the further you get away from that successful project or campaign, You forget the details. You forget the cross-functional team you led. You forget the goals you hit. You forget the fact that y'all won an award. The more that you can create the habit of updating your resume, maybe even a monthly or quarterly basis, the less work you have to do should you ever truly need it. So yes, being ready professionally is one way. Financially, having a 3 to 6 month emergency fund also helps you to have your shoulders down a little bit more. You make more sound decisions when you don't have to worry about whether or not your mortgage or your car note is going to be paid. So doing everything that you can in your power to squirrel away an emergency fund and keeping that money set aside and protected, especially when you start to see those early signs that things aren't going well at your company, it will really help to tide you over should you find yourself on the wrong side of a layoff. Networking, again, I find that when you still have a job, it's much easier to continue to nurture relationships with colleagues, former colleagues, and even people that you don't know. When you don't need something, people are a lot more inclined to hop on a call than when they're concerned that you're going to be asking them for a job. And I get it. Oftentimes people don't have hiring power, or they're concerned about their own role, so they don't have capacity to extend an opportunity to you. But if you just want to catch up or learn more about their experience at their company or learn more about the work that they're doing, I think people are often more inclined to want to talk about themselves and share their experiences. So making a habit on a monthly basis to do one informational interview to continue to nurture your professional circle and to keep those relationships active and healthy. Emotionally, and I think this is one that we don't talk about enough, and I'm not saying have this like fever dream that you're going to be laid off and run the scenarios. I'm not saying that, but I will say emotionally and maybe spiritually, prepare your heart and maybe just remind yourself that you are not what you do. And having that healthy separation of your purpose not being your job. Your purpose is so much deeper than your career, and striking a balance of how connected you are to your role and how much you weave your self-worth into your career. The more you can get to a healthy place and a stable place emotionally, the better off you'll be should you find yourself on the wrong side of a layoff. It is so much harder because a layoff, even if you do all the things that I just shared, a layoff is hard. Even if you know you are a rock star, you get great reviews, you got the biggest bonus you could get, when you are laid off, it feels personal. It feels like you are not good enough. And so the more you can edify yourself and affirm yourself that if a layoff comes, it's not about you. It's about the business. The business did not perform. It's not about your performance. Those thoughts are natural and they will come. But the more you can pour into yourself before it comes, the better off you'll be. And maybe the easier it will be for you to rebound and get yourself back out there for the next opportunity. Y'all, layoffs are hard and it is not something easy to navigate, and it's not linear. You go through stages of grief. And unfortunately, they don't seem to be slowing down. And so in the next episode, I'm going to share about what happens after the ground shifts. I'm going to share my story. I'm going to share my layoff experience and all the things that came right after and how I did come out stronger on the other side. Let's recap our 3 truths for today. The first truth, your body notices before your inbox does. Trust your intuition. Don't push it down. Lean in. Pay attention. My second truth, preparation is power. It's not pessimism. The better prepared you can be, the more proactive you can be, the better off you'll be should you find yourself on the other side of a layoff. And my third truth, the goal isn't to predict. The goal is to be ready. If you think that this episode could help someone, please send it to them. I've been through a layoff, y'all. I know how heavy it is and I know how hard it is. And I am praying for those of you who are experiencing layoff right now. I'm praying for the right opportunity to come your way. I'm praying that there's no lack in your life. I'm believing that the next role is going to be the best role. And I just want you to stay encouraged that you are not what you do. You have purpose, you bring value, and it's going to get better and you're going to get to the other side. I look forward to continuing this conversation next week. Bye, friends. Thanks for listening to In the Middle. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend and click subscribe so you never miss an honest conversation about life in the middle. I'll see you next time.